The hitch mount on a vehicle is kind of like one of those things that's pretty neat, where if you think about it, besides towing a trailer, it's like, what can you really put on there? I guess it a little bit depends on what your vehicle is. You got like a van versus a truck versus a something else like a regular sedan. It kind of changes a little bit. But one thing that like well, with like a truck, for example, a bed extender makes sense. On a minivan, not so much. On you know, four-door sedan, maybe a bed extender makes no sense at all. I guess maybe if you have roof racks and you use it as a roof rack extender, but there's a lot of stuff where you're like, you could do that. So I mean, yeah, if you were to use it as a roof rack extender, that's something. But you could also, one thing that I like is the motorcycle carriers, because I always look at those and I'm like, man, that'd be kind of cool to drive comfortably where I want to go with, maybe like more than just an overnight bag, and I can have a little bit more gear with me. So that way, if I'm going out of town or if I'm going maybe a couple towns over, or even, well, even within just for a day trip, it's nice being on a motorcycle to explore stuff, but it's nice being in a car for a lot of the longer trips, at least for me, because I use pretty much most of my motorcycles have been small motorcycles, 250s and smaller. So they're not really great bikes that you'd ever trust on the highway, but they're good bikes for in town. The CCs, you don't really notice the difference. Well, I guess I've never really ridden a bike that's 1200 or anything to know how much it is, but I know for like a lot of the stuff around town, I'm keeping up with traffic just fine. It's going between towns that's a little bit harder. So I'm always like, oh, it'd be kind of cool to put a bike rack on there. The other thing too is even like a bicycle rack would be cool, because you can kind of do the same thing with a motorcycle that you can with a bicycle. There's so many towns and cities that I look at that are quite bikeable, but it's like getting to the town or even getting to a spot where you can bike. One thing that I thought with biking specifically that's kind of not necessarily neat, but I know it's something where, like, if you're trying to like extend your range. I had a teacher tell me this. He said, if you have a bike rack on your car, you don't have to drive all, like, say you work 20 miles away from your house. You don't have to bike the whole 20 miles if you're trying to bike to work one day. All you have to do is, maybe you bike or you drive about half a mile away from where you're trying to get to, then you ride your bike the rest of the way. And you just slowly, as you get to a point where you're comfortable biking that distance, you say, all right, you know what? I can bike the half mile and back to the car at the end of the day, and I'm pretty comfortable with that. Back it up to a mile, or if after a half day you're like, oh, that's pretty good, just start incrementally extending that, and it really changes your stamina for doing it, and also kind of makes a little bit of biking places a little bit less intimidating. And what's nice about that's like one thing to do. The other thing too is like with the other things that you can have is like, the cooler racks, or they say cooler racks, but I'm trying to remember if there's anything else, but it's kind of like a luggage rack that you have for your back, where it's like a platform that's normally about 2 feet by 4 feet, or maybe 5 feet wide, that you can put some coolers on, maybe some camping gear, maybe some totes, and it just puts a little bit extra there that's outside your vehicle. And it does give you extra room for moving. But one thing that it also does is it's like, for if you're moving something that you don't really want in your car, and you've got something like a sedan, or you've got maybe even a minivan, you can use the luggage rack on the back there and, put something like a gas can, or maybe you have got like paint cans, or you got something that's a little bit messier that you're not really sure you want to put in your car. It's nice to have it there. Maybe you got a cooler that's a little bit leaky. You're like, you know what? I just set that on that rack and strap it down real good. That's like another good thing that you can use a hitch for that's not pulling a trailer. One thing that if you've got like a pickup truck that's kind of neat, is you can put a step there, or you can have like a boot scraper there. So it's like, if you're out in a field or something during hunting season, you coming up, you can scrape off before getting up in your truck. You don't have a second set of shoes with you. Or you could have the roof rack extender on there. And for a lot of things, it might seem excessive, but when you think about like if you're moving a ladder, or if you're moving something that's really long, like poles for something, it's nice to have them fully supported with the extra length on the roof racks. You know, One thing too that I was thinking would be really cool is even like whenever I go to a city that's got a lot of water nearby, you normally see somebody out there with a set of the bumper mounted rod holders. It's a convenient way to carry long rods if you don't really have room inside your vehicle. Also, it kind of looks like cool. It makes you look outdoorsy when you got a set of rod holders on there. And it kind of makes you think, be really cool to just pop off and go fishing if you happen to have a set of rods on you, or easy way to transport them without having to shuffle everything around inside your vehicle to make space for a set of fishing rods. Every now and then when I'm driving around, I'll come across a vehicle that I'll see has the like a not necessarily a moose knuckle, but like a tow hook or some sort of recovery hook slid into their hitch. So that way, I guess if they're stuck in the mud off road, they have a nice anchor point. Maybe they'll use it for pulling something with a rope. Don't really know how advisable some of that stuff is. But it's we're in the realm of pulling. It reminds me of the bumper mounted winches that some of them do slide into that 2-inch receiver. I don't know if they come in one that slides into a different size receiver depending on what options I guess you have available when you look in the hitches. But I know that the winches kind of look neat because they're easy, and depending on the vehicle you have, some vehicles can have a front hitch or a rear hitch. Well, I guess both on the same vehicle, so you can use one winch and put it on whatever side you needed. If you need to winch something on the front or you need to winch something on the back, it's nice and easy to just unhook it, carry it to the front, hook it back on. Don't really have to worry about having that extra winch on there. You only need to worry about one winch. And I guess too, if you got multiple vehicles, you can move it between vehicles without having to buy multiple winches. Or one thing that I thought would be neat to make to go into a hitch would be a set of off-road lights, or even a work lamp, because it's a nice mounting spot for if you're like, setting up a campsite or something. You can put a nice light bar there, or you could have something that plugs in and can light up your area, so that way you got a clear area to work where you can see. I guess the disadvantage of that is depending on your vehicle, you don't want to run the battery down if you're just sitting there, but it's kind of something to think about because it's like, it's easily removable. So I guess if you're, going off road, you can put it on, especially if you've got a front hitch, you got a light bar for the on road, and then depending on where you're at, you can take that light bar back off. And because you don't have a light bar sitting on the front of your vehicle, depending on where you're at, that may or may not be legal. So now you know what? You're legal because you don't have a light bar on. Another one that I was thinking of making that I only ever saw once is a spare tire carrier. I saw a spare tire carrier that one guy had for carrying a set of spares for his vehicle, and I've never really seen that since, but I always thought that's kind of a neat concept, especially if you do a lot of on to off-roading to back to on. Gives you a set to carry, so that way, you can have a nice smooth ride instead of road tires, and then when you're ready to go off-road, you got a nice set of knobbies or whatever's ready for that environment that you're going to go into, because maybe you got some paddles for sand or something. And then you can put back on some DOT certified tires for going on the roads. That's something else you can do with a hitch mounted bumper receiver if you have a little bit of imagination. One that I've been tempted to try that I've seen, but I don't quite fully understand how well they work is the hitch mounted snow plows. I've seen like different plow hookups where a lot of the ones that I've seen are like 4 points for the bigger trucks, and every now and then I'll see one that's selling a snowplow for like lighter vehicles, and it'll say something along the lines of mounts in a 2-inch receiver, fits any vehicle, and I'll say, it kind of looks cool, but there's 4-point mounts I see, or multiple point plow mounts seem to mount really secure. And every time that I've ever had something in a receiver, it seems to have a lot of play in the connection compared to some of the plows that I've seen. So I don't know if that's just like a figment of my imagination with how much a plow moves versus how much a hitch moves, or whether it's a product that doesn't quite would just kind of, I guess, cling a little bit as it, pins rattle and stuff, because there's a little bit of play in there. One of the neat things about bumper mount hitch apparatus is that, it's kind of neat that you're really only limited by your imagination, because looking on the internet, I've seen all sorts of things that I guess would fit somebody, or they're kind of more like entertaining stuff, where you look at them and you're like, oh, it's kind of neat, because I've seen, different ornaments that you have for that, or you have different, kind of, joke things that you can put in there. They kind of, brighten, I guess, the days of people around you. So I guess really one of the things too is you can kind of, if you can dream it up and you can search it up, you can probably find somebody that's either done it or had the idea of doing it, and maybe he's got some input on how to do what you want with your hitch receiver. It's kind of like the only limitation to what you can do is what you can imagine. That being said, it might actually be what other people can imagine, because depending on where you're at, there seems to be endless resources online for stuff to do. If you're really searching for it and you're saying, you know what, not necessarily on the browser itself, but every now and then you come across a website that seems like really into it, or you'll call up a local receiver dealer, that sells hitch receivers or mounts them and stuff, and they'll have a guy that's really gung ho just feeding you ideas left and right, and you're like, wow, this dude, I don't know if he knows what he's talking about, but he's definitely talking about something that I don't know about. It's always fun to think about. Guess if you've listened this far, thank you. Have a nice day.